How to Create a Glitch, Monologues, Season 2, Chapter 8. This is the 8th episode of Season 2 of How to Create a Glitch in the Matrix Monologues. In this episode, I will be discussing a new topic, that is, how reality is nested, and how that nesting manifests and occurs in the context of our experience. The manner by which this episode came to me was through a commonplace everyday experience that your average person would experience quite frequently in their daily life. In fact, this concept came to me while I was watching a friend play video games. It begins with a simple realization. Essentially, that realization is that our mind reacts with programmed responses to specific stimuli. What this means is that our minds act with pre-programmed emotional responses to stimuli in our environment, regardless of whether the environment is real or mere projection, i.e. video games. What this also means is that phantom stimuli, that is, stimuli which mirrors real stimuli in some basic way, can produce the same behavioral responses, whether we like it, or know it, or not. For example, let's say that you're watching someone play video games, and that someone you are watching is your spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend. Now, in the video game, that person is interacting with an attractive computer-generated avatar. That avatar is mere artificial intelligence. Such an interaction will produce the same pre-programmed response as would an interaction with a real human being. That is, you will become jealous. Now, it is trite to say that, but that is only the beginning of the discussion. For what we see from this is that our impulses dissolve into the substance of anything we immerse ourselves in, from television, to virtual reality, to hobbies, to building Lego, to playing squash. But there are a few prerequisites for this to work. First of all, it requires the willing suspension of disbelief. Second, it requires the immersion of our attention into some substrate. Third, it requires releasing one's impulses naturally into the subject of one's attention. So these are the three prerequisites. What is the significance? When one allows one's attention to dissolve into anything in this fashion, the result is that fabricated stimuli become as real as the real thing as far as one's impulses and natural programming are concerned. In fact, the result of this dissolving of one's impulses into the subject of one's attention is the sublimation of one's impulses. In effect, identity becomes mutable, and extends into the reality created by that suspension of disbelief, manifesting in a distinct and completely new way. So what does this mean? It means that the suspension of disbelief, the immersion of one's attention into an object, renders our impulses subservient to its substance, and that renders that object a new reality in and of itself. What do I mean by the word reality in this context? A reality created by the dissolution of one's impulses into the substance of an experience represents the transmutation of identity to a distinct plane. Which brings us back to the very beginning of our discussion of the nested nature of reality as set out in the early podcasts of Monologues. Each level of expressive language by any given person represents a distinct and nested reality because it represents a separate substrate through which one can acquire an immersive experience and suspension of disbelief. So for example, if we imagine that two people are communicating. One is speaking, the other is listening. The attention of the listener can be fixed on the hand language of the speaker, the posture and posing, the facial expressions, the voice or the location. Each level, each plate, represents a distinct level of meaning, which can draw the attention of the listener, and thereby dissolve the impulses of the listener. In this dissolution, the expressive language of the speaker becomes embraced by the anticipatory expectations of the listener, the intuitive projection of the listener. Now, unlike some substrate of experience which is inert, or even programmed, like a video game, the immersive experience represented by another individual's expressive language is different in a distinct way. How is it different? It is different because it is the projection of the speaker first, then and only thereafter. Is it the intermingled projection of two individuals, a dynamic and fluid concoction, which might only be said to be a truly alive and fully nested reality? Now, to take a step back, I discussed in the book, How to Create a Glitch in the Matrix, how reality is shaped by our impulses, which reflect our expectations, Thus, it becomes clear that in the dissolution of those impulses into a distinct medium for the expression of identity, we are literally seeing the creation of a new nested universe, a nested reality which has as much substance as the reality we exist in during our everyday ordinary lives. Anyway, that's the end of today's podcast. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment and subscribe.